Yeah, I think the one about men is going to be a little bit shorter because there are fewer men races.
Yeah. Even if you count talking about Atmorans and Akaviri, because
Oh,
they're
I
technically
plan
human
on it.
races.
I plan on talking about Atmorans because Atmorans are different because so Nords that have bloodlines, Atmoran bloodlines, a lot of times have some giant blood in them. We see this with Lyris. So, and that ties in more with beast people, showing that giants used to be sentient, and instead of the beasts that they are now. These are the Atmoran giants too, not the giants we have on Tamriel. They are related, but something happened to the giants and they're not as sentient anymore.
When you guys are ready.
Yep.
I'm
Go
ready.
ahead and do it whenever.
All right. Now we are back and talking about the humans.
I'm gonna love the men races. It's lot easier and a lot simpler to talk about because the men stuff is more streamlined. Because in a lot of the games, that's the perspective we get is the perspective from men's perspective, uh, and there are distinct races of men, but all of their stuff is pretty well documented, which makes it a lot easier to do stuff like this, talk about them and all that. So
The reason for their documentation is because they arrived on Earth, well, on Tamriel after the elves.
yes, they are a young race. That's what the elves consider them. They consider them a young race. Um, and their creation stories differ on how they were created. It's not like they all came from one race like the elves did, but a fair chunk of them came from one specific group, but not all of them. There's a number of groups of men that came from off continent, which makes it interesting. But before you can really get into any talking about specific races, you have to talk about Saint Alessia and the Slave Queen Revolt, because that's kind of what spurned men to become an independent race of people of Tamriel. So, yeah, we can't really get into that without talking about our friends the Aliens, and I'll leave it to these two to kind of start describing the slave revolt because I'm gonna save my breath for when we get to talk about the best race of men. But yeah, so
Oh
y'all go ahead and take
lord.
it away.
You mean the honor of that? Oh, I get to talk about them. Oh boy. So when we had this entire empire, because the elves like to make very big empires that fall apart really, really fast. For some reason. It's almost like they, pull off more than they can chew. But the aliens decided to conquer all of Cyrodiil. They just said, okay, we're gonna do this, and ooh, look at those idiots. They don't live that long. Let's enslave them. Let's just do whatever the hell we want to them. One day, this person named Alessia gets just done with their shit. Decided to just slave revolt her entire city worth of slaves and just people who are just been treated horribly out of what is called the Nedic people, because they're still needs at this time. They're not Imperials like they become. But they just say, you know what? Nope. I'm done with you. And then they start slave revolting one at a time. And it's pretty slow at first. But we do have this I don't know how to explain him without seeming like I'm on some crack cocaine. There's a character called Pellinal Whitestrake, and he has been confirmed to be an android from the future, powered by a literal amulet of blood from an Aedra. And not only that, but the Aedra of time. So we're talking about the blood red diamond and the amulet of kings. He's powered by that, even though it gets destroyed in the beginning of the fourth era.
Yeah, you got some lore in discrepancies with that. With it being destroyed, but he's from the future kind of thing.
Yeah,
Unless at some point it gets remade, but I mean,
it could be.
That was a gift straight to Alessia from Akatosh. Which is why she had so much power.
Or we can all know how, Elder Scrolls fixes everything, and another Dragon Break can occur.
Yep.
It could also come from another Dragon Break. That is also pretty good one.
I do want to correct something real quick. The Alessian peoples weren't Needs. They were a descendant race of Atmoran. Because from Atmorans came Nords, Bretons, and Imperials. So the Needs, we're not 100% sure where they came from. They're a different type of people.
This is the thing, though. They kind of enslaved both Atmorans and Needs, so they bred together.
But Alessia herself was Atmoran descended. Because Atmorans were the first race of men. But yeah, so you have the Alessia slave revolt. That's the big kicker here. They revolt, free all the slaves, and now all of a sudden, men have an empire and don't know what to do with it. That's kind of where we pick up the first race of men. And that's where Alessia sits on the white gold tower, the throne in the white gold tower, as the first emperor of what is now Cyrodiil.
Now, we will get into the entire slave revolt in the future, but I do want to point out one thing. This will be a mini thing of why the Minotaurs exist, and yes, this is actual lore, and yes, I hate it. Morehouse...
He's half.
Yeah.
Half divine, dude.
Half divine, half Minotaur. Oh, dear God, I cannot believe I'm saying this on recording. He fucks the queen and creates an entire race.
Yeah, Minotaurs used to be more sentient than they are now. They used to help with the Alessia Empire and stuff.
And actually, one of the towns that you will find in Cyrodiil used to actually have a lot of them, and even after the first Akaviri invasion, a lot of Akaviri potentates actually grew up in that town. Like, there's a lot of people who have been in those towns that were actually made by the Minotaurs.
Yeah, Minotaurs used to be a lot more sentient, and that's going to be a reoccurring theme. Because even when we get to the Nords, they had some dealings with the Giants. The Giants used to be a lot more sentient than they are now, too. So you have almost the dumbing down of some beast-esque races. Because, yeah, Morahus came right from Kine, from Kinnereth. And eloped with Alessia. And they had offspring, and that was the birth of the Alessian Empire. That was the first empire of men after the Atmoran stuff happened. That's the first major empire of men, I guess would be a better way to put it. Because there were little here and there groups and tribes of men, but that was the first empire. And obviously from that you have your Imperials, which are our first race of men, and probably the most jack of all trades, I would probably say, race in the Elder Scrolls. Or they can kind of just do it all.
Yeah.
Because they are fantastic warriors we see from the Imperial Legion. They are fantastic battle mages that we also see from the Imperial Legion. I mean, they're just a catch-all race.
Like, yeah, they're pretty good at doing almost anything, except for... they're kind of lacking in magi when it comes to, like, a lot of them. Mostly because of just the native flaw of men not having a lot of people who are magically gifted.
I agree with that. But you have to remember, you have the Battle Spire. And those
That
those
is
Imperial battle
true.
mages are some juiced suckers.
Yeah.
Those
But
are the
the
people
problem
who
is-
get sent to a realm of oblivion to train for years to turn into an entire badass.
You gotta also think you have the Tharns. The Tharns are a magically gifted Imperial family.
That is true.
but you
They're
also-
one of the only ones that you actually get name dropped a lot.
Yeah, they occur
You need to
throughout history.
remember though, even with the Battle Spire and all that, some of their mages that do get powerful enough do get offers to the Civic Order.
Yes, and talking about the Civic Order, like we said last time, they accept anyone as long as you're powerful and a genuinely decent person.
Yeah.
Like even in this game, there's an orc that's in the Civic Order, which is very impressive. That a orc
Right.
found their way into the Civic Order.
I
But
forgot about
yeah.
that, dude.
we're talking about men. So yeah, you have your Imperials. They're your very catch-all race. Good sailors, good warriors, fantastic traders. Everything. They're good at running empires until they run them into the ground. So
Yeah.
They do that a lot.
yeah, they've done it like
Yeah.
what 5 or 6 times over the course of history.
I mean, we're in the
Yeah.
4th Empire.
Granted, those empires they create are very strong though. They're not like,
yeah.
oh, they're making an empire. No, they are Tamriel.
Technically
spanning,
5th
usually.
because we don't count the Elysian Order as the 1st Empire because it was just
Yeah, it's true.
Cyrodiil uniting.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, so yeah, your
And
Imperials are.
they usually fall. Imperial empires usually fall from assassination.
From within, yeah. Normally, it's
Yeah.
not an outside force that causes them to fall. The exception being the Great War that's fought right before Skyrim. And technically, that empire didn't fall. It just was like, okay, for truce, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So your Imperials are they anywhere? I would be willing to bet anywhere there's a major town, you will find an Imperial because they are very widespread, very versatile people. You'll find at least one.
Time for your
Should we go on
Then
the
Nord?
should we go on the Need and Nord spill now, or should we brush over Redguard real quick? Because we know
Redguard's
know
kind
a-
of our
we
thing
know
we
a
need
bit
to.
about-
we should talk about like we brought up the Dragon Break because technically the Dragon Break brings the Red Guards to the land.
Yes, yeah. So the Redguards descended from a people known as the Yokudans, a very ancient race of people from not Tamriel. They were from Akavir, which is a island off the coast.
He made the same mistake.
I did, didn't I?
It was called Yakuta.
Yakuta.
Akavir
Oh, I
was-
said Akavir.
Akavir was the one with the 5 races because we do have the Akaviri, which
Yeah,
were
I meant
the
Yokuda.
race of man over there that is basically extinct. We don't talk about them because they're extinct. They got 8 vampires.
Yeah.
Vampire snakes.
People. Yeah. So yeah, Yokuda. I always make that mistake because I like Akavir.
Mind you,
But
one thing to point out:
yeah, go ahead.
vampires that are not linked to Moloch Ball.
Well, we don't know that. You can't prove that.
We have found no proof that they are linked to Moloch Ball either, which is
Well,
the
you
bad
have-
part.
You have 2 types of vampire: the vampires that are part of Molag Bal's whole conspiracy and worship him, and the ones that got turned are like, screw Molag Bal. So, but yeah, we'll save that for the supernatural powers episode. Though that could be a fun one.
Oh yeah.
But
I
but
have
yeah,
to do
so-
that on Halloween.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
So you have your Yokudans, which were the not really proto Red Guards. They're just the Red Guards by a different name because they didn't really change. You have your Yokudan heroes when they land on Tamriel, Frandar Hunding being the main one, and yeah, they kind of cut a swath across Tamriel because they are, and I don't think I will get any kickback here, the most talented sword masters in Tamriel. the most talented.
They had an entire way of being called sword singing.
Yeah.
I don't
They-
think we can actually just deny that.
They were able to conjure spirit swords, and it's not like conjuration like the magic. They were able to forge their soul into a weapon, essentially, and use it. Very, very lightsaber-esque in the fact that it cut through armor like butter, from what we know about it. And unfortunately,
hold on.
yeah.
I will actually have to go Star Wars nerd on you a little bit right here, and we'll say a force saber, a predecessor to the lightsaber.
Either way, yes. But the kicker here is, as of this moment in history, sword singing is all but lost. It is a lost art. Does not make them any less deadly with a sword in their hands. They are still some of the best swordsmen. Many
lost.
red guards. Well, I'm gonna get to that.
Yeah, it is lost even in the fourth era, which is the modern. And
Which is
we
very
like to
sad.
remind you, when we say now, right now, we're talking about the second era.
Yeah, as of this
So,
game.
Yeah, as of Elder Scrolls Online.
Sword singing was lost. It was briefly found again in this game, mind you, by Sai Sahan. He figured out how to summon his spirit sword, which I went freaking berserk over. I think Mav was in the chat when that happened. I was freaking out because that is very, if sword singing was rediscovered, it would be one of the most substantial discoveries in a long time in Elder Scrolls lore, because it is a lost art. But back to the Red Guards, they're incredibly hardy people. They do a lot of traveling, live in the deserts, so they got to be very hardy people. Some of them are nomadic. Like I said, talented swordsmen, which make them very, very good sell swords. A lot of sell swords are Red Guards. A lot of mercenaries for hire and sell swords. Also, fantastic sailors. Some of the best sailors in all of Tamriel are Red Guards. But as you can see, that skill set kind of lends them to their hard lives that they lead. Being in the desert and being very nomadic. But yeah, so that's my little blurb. I got a couple other things I want to say about them. I'll see if y'all have any input on it before I keep going.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. All right. I want to talk about a specific group of Red Guards. You have your Crowns and Forebears. Those are boring. That's politicals. You have your Ashaba. That's the ones I want to talk about. They are Red Guards, equally as deadly as any other Red Guard with a sword. Choose to live in exile from Red Guard society. Because in Red Guard society, it is unclean to touch the bodies of the ancestors, which made the Red Guards rather susceptible to necromancy. So when people would raise the dead, the Red Guards would be, oh no, we can't touch the bodies of our ancestors. So that's what the Ashaba formed for. The Ashaba are a nomadic tribe that lives in the desert, travel around, cutting down the dead, rooting out necromancy. Kind of cool. Really cool. But they chose to be exiled to save the people of the Akavir Desert from necromancy. Which, by the way, the Akavir Desert is freaking necromancy central. Because if you know anything about body decomposition, dry, very unhumid climates are very good for body preservation. So that's why they have it's just such a necromancy problem in the desert out there. And normally it's not Red Guard necromancers that screw them over. It's necromancers, but yeah.
Yeah, but the presidents like to F around with magic a lot. You really blame them.
Yeah, so one small thing, the Red Guards are very untrusting of magic because of all the fighting they had to do with elves along the way.
And
we'll see that
elves
pop up again.
Theoretically sinking their continent with that powerful of magic.
Yeah. And we'll see that as a reoccurring theme with another race here in a second, but I'm not quite done with the Red Guards. The Red Guards actually have some pretty cool lore. Just they're a fantastic race of people. One of my most played characters in Skyrim was a Red Guard that dual wielded the scimitars, and oh man, they're a blast. They really are. In any game you play them in, Their lore is good. You can do a good backstory because they are such a traveled people, and they're a great race. Probably one of my more favorite races, but this leads me into my favorite race, and the one that I'll probably talk about for the next 3 hours. No, I'm kidding. But you have, like I said earlier, the Atmorans, which were created by Kenrith, breathed onto the throne of the world, and then they left Tamriel. Well, where did they go? To Atmora. Oh, you go figure that. Atmora is a temperate, I do a little bit colder than Tamriel, island to the north. Out in the Sea of Ghosts. We don't know where it is. It was interesting, but the Atmorans had to flee Atmora, which is why Sarthal was created, which is why Windhelm eventually became the capital, which is why the original people were sent out to Sarthal and Ysgramor with them. They were making sure it was safe for them to come to Tamriel. Because Atmora became essentially a deep freezer. We don't know what caused it, but the chill happened. They call it the chill. It's just the rapid freezing of the continent of Atmora, which Atmorans gave birth to like a lot of races, but most importantly, the Nords. Because there has been very few races that have been as influential as the Nords on Tamriel. They are your, according to Oblivion, your fair hair and fair skinned people from the north. They are essentially your Vikings. That's just what they are. They're Vikings, but not as nomadic. An interesting thing is there are family groups of Nords that still have bloodlines from the giants of Atmora. That's why some Nords are noticeably bigger than others, like Lyris Titanborn. Her dad was half giant, so she's a quarter giant, and she is absolutely massive. She stands taller than my character by like another head and shoulder, and my character is as tall and as big as you can make him Nord, and she dwarfs him. So there are Nords that still have giant blood in them. That is getting more and more rare as we get out from the fact that when they fled from Atmora. But it's still around. It definitely is still around. Wow, I could talk about the Nords forever. There's so much stuff, because you could talk about the Dragon Cult, because that was the first religion they brought over, was the Dragon Cult.
That is true, but that is more of a very focused topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Dragon Cult, you have the sect of the Dragon Cult that became the Skull or Nords that live on Northern Solstheim and worship the Allmaker. But all around, Nords are a very big, for the most part. They're bigger than most races. Very tall, naturally taller than most races other than High Elves. And they are, most of the time, expert blacksmiths and very good infantrymen and scouts. Because you got to remember, they live in Skyrim, and Skyrim is still pretty unruly compared to some of the other continents, other parts of the continent. They make pretty decent scouts too, because their survival skills are pretty good. Which your survival skills would be pretty good too if you lived in a part of Tamriel that was constantly trying to either freeze you to death or throw you to the bears and wolves. So
that is also true.
Yes, but a lot of the first empires were ran by the Nords. Ye old Talos, Tiber Septim himself, who has not been born as of this game yet. He's born in the next, 50 years or so, which is cool.
200.
200 years. Either way.
It's 200 years.
Yeah, 200 years, or give or take out, from this point of this game.
Because we're not even to the birth of his father yet.
Okay, yeah, so.
Yeah.
But Sharpie Earlybeard, which later becomes Tiber Septim, becomes Talos, was probably mostly Nord blood. Mostly. I say mostly because a lot of these men races interbreed with each other, just like in real life. They're all human, so it don't really matter to them, you know? You can see that in Skyrim, up in Dawnstar, in the game Skyrim. The Forge Master up there is a Nord, and his wife's a Redguard. So, yeah, that just shows that the men kind of don't care as much. The racism when it comes to men, doesn't extend to other men, like how some of the elves don't like each other. Most of the men are chill with other men races. It's the elves they got beef with. So, but yeah, your Nords are interesting. They are a very storied people, and I could probably do a whole thing over just Nordic lore because we know a lot about the Nords. A
Well,
whole lot.
we could do a short bit on their society styles like we've done on everyone else.
Yeah, so the Nord society style is you have your Jarls, each hold, which is the providences in Skyrim. There are 9 holds, there are 9 Jarls, and they have a High King that is decided by popular vote by the Jarls. So it's a very democratic style, which is odd because Imperials don't have a democratic style. Bretons don't do it democratically. Redguards don't do it. I don't think any other race really does it democratically. It's kind of whoever holds the most power. Granted, a lot of your Jarl families are ancient bloodline Nords. They have blood that can trace back to the 500 companions for the most part, which gives them probably a little bit more political power. But your High King is still voted upon by those families. So it's you have to be either have enough power to sway the votes in your favor by threat, or be voted in fairly. Which we even see in Skyrim that the threat way doesn't work as well with Ulfric Stormcloak, because even if you side with him and do the whole Stormcloak crap and turn everyone to the Stormcloaks in Skyrim, they still are not a fan of him being High King, even the ones who support him. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of more give and take to the Nord society than other societies. And another really interesting thing to note is within Skyrim, the different holds all have very distinct traditions and stuff. Like a Nord that was born in Windhelm will be way different than a Nord that's born in Solitude. And a Nord that was born in Dawnstar is going to be way different than a Nord that's born in Riften. So they are all Nords, but they are still very distinct people that that are spread out across some of the harsher areas in Skyrim or in Tamriel. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting lore with the Nords.
I think we should branch off a little bit to the Reach.
Yeah, the Reachman.
I was going to talk about the Reachman. I was like, yeah, we should talk about that. Because they're technically the closest thing we have to needs left. Because they decided not to very much interbreed that much. When it comes to at least what we know.
A lot of them are part Breton, though, at least, too. Which is crazy. A lot of the ones, especially the ones that are in Skyrim, at least, are Breton ancestry. They have Breton ancestry. And the Reachmen and the Nords have warred for a very long time. Because the Reachmen claim the Reach, which is out where Markarth is, and the Nords claim the Reach, saying, hey, well, we conquered it from you, it's ours. And it causes a big, fun mess. Normally a bloody mess, but one that most of the time the Nords win, to be fair, but the Reachmen have claimed the Reach a couple times throughout history through force.
They have a very druidic, ritualistic society.
Theirs is more ritualistic than it really is druidic, because their ties are to Hircine, mainly. They're not tied to the good, quote-unquote, nature gods. They're tied to a very primal nature god. That's why witches can become hag-ravens. Hag-ravens are people, technically were, at one point. Then you have your briar hearts, which are people who have had their heart replaced by a briar tree seed. Makes them incredibly strong. They're very, very nature magic oriented, but very much on the other end of the spectrum from the druids. Their stuff isn't. I don't want to say it disrespects nature, because the Reachmen still appreciate nature, but it's more of the supernatural side of nature than just let's make nature look cooler, kind of like the druids do.
They're kind of the druids that say, we respect life, but we don't give a shit.
Yeah, they're pushing it to its extreme. Be that for good or bad. I mean, they can harness it pretty well. They're also one of the few races that if you are a werewolf, they freaking think you're cool because you were blessed by one of their gods. If you're a werewolf, they are fine with were creatures.
Imagine if that actually happened in Skyrim, if you got that. Too bad the enemy coding is kind of made to have you fight them. That would just be amazing to do.
The ones you free from Sidna Mine, if you go to their place after you free them, you can turn into a werewolf around them and they don't care. So there is a little bit of coding there, but I wish it would have been better, I agree. But yeah, one of the few races that say, oh, cool, you're a were creature, that's fine with us.
Speaking of people who turn into were creatures, well, they don't turn into were creatures, but often end up wearing zero clothes, I think we need to talk about a certain race that I think you already know exactly what I'm going about. The Krathingi over there.
Yes, because they are technically men.
I will just read this one line from the culture tab of their wiki, because I do have it, like, straight up just on my screen. They generally prefer to go naked, but wear clothes because 9 times out of 10 they're outside of their native land. They kind of like, because they're in a swamp. You gotta remember that. And that's
they live in Black Marsh.
Super annoying climate to live in. They like being almost as nude as possible. Just because of how humid that shit is. Like, I feel that. I live in Florida. It's like, I'm basically living in the, like, American version of Black Marsh.
Yeah, so, and if you want to get to the nitty-gritty, the Kthringi are dead. But as of this game, there is one tribe left. But it was because of the Connaughton flu that they are dead. A dead race. The Connaughton flu pretty well wiped them out. And I say pretty much a dead race. We find a tribe in ESO. But you learn that tribe is not really alive. They have bargained with a Daedra to stay alive. And they are living skeletons, essentially. They just use magic to make them look like they're not skeletons.
Yeah, so the flu was flooding in from Mudtree Village over in Shadowfen. And they basically said, hey, Clavicus, can you give us the ability to not die from this? Oh, don't worry, I got you. Snaps them and turns them all into undead. So they started using magic to get their old form back.
Yeah, so technically already wiped out, but you technically meet a tribe of them, but technically they're not alive, so you know.
And there was one alive person from their actual race that we do meet in this game, which would be Drilla.
Yes, but by the time of Skyrim, they're dead. There's no more.
Yeah, unless she somehow like went over to another area, interbreeded with somebody, because she is female.
Yeah,
you gotta remember the lore about that.
Yeah,
and then just
as long as you have technically one female, you can repopulate.
She could have just made blue Bretons, which would have been funny as shit.
Which is essentially what the Kthringi were. They were blue Bretons. Because they were pretty magically inclined. Which is, again, odd for a man race. Which I forgot I mentioned about the Nords. The Nords are very, very little magic, and they very, very much distrust magic because the Snow Elves and all that stuff. So it's a reoccurring theme that most men races are not inclined to magic. Kthringi are, Bretons are half men. They're very inclined to magic. And Imperials are okay with magic. I wouldn't say incredibly gifted, but they're okay. But yeah, the Kontringi are a race of men, technically, though they are dead at the time where we catch up to the single player game, Sky, that's the timeline. So, unfortunately. Because they have been a cool playable race.
Speaking of cool playable races, I think we need to talk about the Ket Kep 2. Which I surprisingly said correctly. Damn. Long story short, this is one of the precursor Nedic races that we knew of. Back in the first era, back when the slave revolts was happening. And, they're mostly known for, using straight up heresy. They knew how to do blood magic. And, oh, they were powerful.
Yeah, blood magic and shadow magic are the two types of magic that you almost never see in the Elder Scrolls, but when you see them, the people who wield them are normally very powerful.
If Pelennor is impressed by your antics, you know you have some powerful shit. Because he ran into them at one point because he actually had to get one of their healers, which healing with blood magic is pretty powerful. I don't know, maybe because you're putting blood into them when they're losing blood so they don't die. Which, that opens up a whole can of worms. Like, does the blood magic, like, convert the blood type into what it needs? Like, because that would be dope. If you really think about it in the actual medical way. It would basically be a catch-all for saving somebody's life.
Yeah. The fact that blood magic is so strong and those who wield it throughout history, most of them are vampires, I would say. But this tribe of men didn't know how to wield it, and it's a very taboo thing to do, especially nowadays in Tamriel, but it was a very powerful magic to use.
And actually, a clan of them actually kind of split it off, and this is how we get Bloodroot Forge over in Craglorn.
Yep, and that very much so uses blood magic in there, so... Back in the day, that was a rough dungeon, too, funny enough.
Oh, yeah, it was pretty rough.
But yeah, so, yeah, you got not as many men races as you do elf races. But we could talk about the men races. There's a lot of lore on all of them.
And there's a lot of little ones that have
definitely
died out.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Zeorma, another one that lived in Blackmarsh. You could have also called the other one that we just talked about in Blackmarsh, but it was in Leowind, which is a part of Cyrodiil, so yada yada yada. It's literally like 2 seconds from Blackmarsh. Just go across the border.
Crazy how the swamp devours those that it doesn't like.
Yeah, it's on the other side of that wall.
Yeah, we don't talk about
them. The trees and all that on the other side of that wall is Black Marsh over there.
We are in a Leowind territory, aren't we?
Oh no. Where is this?
Oh no, yeah, we are right by Shadowfen.
Yeah. Like I said, we're right next door. Other side of your castle is Black Marsh. When the Argonians get pissed off, they're coming here first.
Good luck.
Oh no.
But yeah, there's a lot of men races that have died out. And it's not probably much of died out as it is have bred into the bloodlines that are now prominent. Because really, Imperial's a catch-all term, in my opinion. Because there ain't much telling what kind of, different races went into Imperial.
Yeah, that is very much true.
think that wraps up the humans on the most
I
part.
think it does, and that was really short.
Oh, not as short as you think. You know.
Yeah, yeah, but there's a
For the
lot.
human side, yeah, no, that was like 45 minutes.
Yeah, there's just a lot
Well,
less races of men to talk about than there are the other ones.
oh yeah, no. Well, technically we have the well,
Uh,
depends on how deep we want to go. The races of beasts.
Yeah, you can't really.
we shall
You
do
can
that
kind of.
later.
Yeah, you can
Oh
brush
yeah.
over the Khajiit and stuff because there's not a ton
Oh
on them.
no, we actually have
We do
like there's
have
others.
a race of man to talk about here.
Ooh.
The Akaviri. Because if you don't know, if there's only one race of man on a continent, you will call them by their continent name instead of whatever name they have, because we don't know that name. That would be the Akaviri, because the Telesi have the name, and it's not called Telessa over there. Like, you don't use that name.
Yeah.
So, we have multiple conflicting, like, we don't know anything about them. All we know is they have been eaten by the vampiric race of serpent men. And, it could be either way. Could have been slaves, could have been war slaves. We did see a couple of those, so that could have actually been a thing. Because we do have the first Akaviri invasion, and most of them were actually human-like, instead of Telesi, which is supposed to be, in massive quotations, gigantic snake people. So it could have been they said, okay, we're gonna keep you guys around, but as massive slaves, and we're just gonna use you for war, and then our generals are going to be Telesi. Because we actually have a bit of evidence that that is the actual case. Just by the forces that Riemann Cyrodiil encounters back in the First Age.
And some of the first blades were Tesecti or Telesi, if I remember right.
And
Some
most of
the ones
those
that stayed
Akaviri
behind.
men actually kind of interbred into the top part of Cyrodiil. Like, Bruma had a few people, and then there's a couple of other towns there that actually had both Telesi and Akaviri bloodlines, because we figured out that the Telesi are more human than we expected, because they could actually breed with human races.
Yeah, yeah. It's also a good thing to mention that Akavir is also where dragons naturally were for a long time.
Until
So
they got kind of chased out by the
they did.
Telesi.
The Telesi and the Akaviri were master dragon slayers. So that's why some of the first blades were dragon slayers from Akavir, which is kind of cool, which is where they get their dragon slayer ancestry from.
And that's kind of where they wanted to basically... Their main goal, from what we can tell when it comes to, like, the actual lore, because we don't know their main reason, is to probably find a Dragonborn to be able to finish off the rest of the dragons for good. Because of the whole Dragonborn being able to do that type of thing. They probably wanted to come over here, find the Dragonborn that they were wanting to find, which they found it pretty quick. They got their ass kicked by it and immediately said, wait a minute, you're the Dragonborn. We surrender.
Yeah, so.
And they probably just wanted to finish off the dragons, to be completely honest with you. But then they just, decided not to go back.
Yeah. Because they were some of the first ones to respect the dragon blood, which is interesting.
Oh, I think that wraps up the humans.
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely
Yeah,
all of
no.
at that point.
Then we'll probably do a beast one later.
Oh yeah, we got to get to the beast
Don't
races.
worry, we haven't forgot the Khajiits and Argonians. We will talk about them.
The only problem about
And-
talking about beast folk is we can do it either two ways. The ones that are sentient, which is a pretty amount of them, but
I think we'll start with the ones that are sentient and move into the non-sentient ones.
Yeah.
And also the lost ones from Topol's variety.
oh yay, we get to talk about the Drudge.
That's gonna wrap up today's recording and everything.
Yep.
So, do one of these.